الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله نور النور بسم الله النور.
Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with us.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
This time we're taking a look at a text called Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
Yes.
And it's compiled by Ibn Shuba al-Harani.
Right.
And we're going to be taking a look at some of the esoteric teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family and his household.
That's right. And it's really fascinating because right from the beginning, Tuhaf Al-Uqul starts with a very profound statement.
Okay.
There is no God but Allah, exclusively without any associate.
Right.
And what's really striking is how Ibn Shuba al-Harani himself connects this very basic declaration of faith with a sort of secret truth. So it suggests that even within the most basic tenets of Islam, there are these layers of meaning that we can uncover.
Yeah, it's like saying there's more to our faith than what we see on the surface.
Exactly.
And it kind of makes you want to, dig deeper and see what else is there.
Absolutely.
He also talks about, the role of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, as a bridge to understanding God.
Right.
Because we can't really, understand the divine on our own.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of concealed knowledge comes in.
Okay.
Because the text suggests that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, received and transmitted very profound knowledge.
Okay.
And that this knowledge continued to be passed down through his household, through the Imams, peace be upon them.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider the Quranic verse 4.59.
Yes.
Which states, "O you who believe, obey God and obey the apostle and those in authority from among you."
Right.
And so it seems like Tuhaf Al-Uqul is using this verse to highlight the position of the Imams, peace be upon them, as the inheritors and transmitters of this knowledge.
Exactly. And the text also emphasizes the importance of seeking this concealed knowledge and the dangers of neglecting it. It really makes it seem like a very critical responsibility for believers.
It really does.
And it's not presented in a straightforward manner. The text goes into this whole idea of symbolic and allegorical interpretations.
Right.
So not everything should be taken literally.
Right. And we see that with, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and his example of the three men under the shade of the divine throne.
Right. And this isn't about a literal place.
Right.
It's more about the spiritual states of these different types of people.
So what do you think is the deeper meaning behind this symbolism here?
Well, I think...
What's the lesson that Imam Ali, peace be upon him, is trying to convey?
I think Imam Ali, peace be upon him, is really emphasizing that true closeness to God is not really determined by your outward actions or even physical proximity, but it's really about your inner state and your alignment with the divine.
Right. It's not just about, rituals and practices.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about a deeper connection.
It's about a transformation.
Exactly. And so we see this theme of symbolism throughout the text. And even in Imam Ali's, peace be upon him, words about intelligence.
Yes.
Where he says, "O Ali, the deeds of those who do not enjoy the following three characters are nil. Piety that impedes against committing acts of disobedience to God, the glorified, the majestic."
Right.
So he's linking piety with intellect.
Right. He's suggesting that intelligence is actually intertwined with our spiritual understanding.
So it's not just about, being clever or knowledgeable.
It's about action.
It's about aligning our actions with our understanding.
Right. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
And this idea is also seen in Imam Ali's, peace be upon him, instructions to Malik al-Ashtar.
Yeah.
When he's talking about governing Egypt, he uses these allegorical figures to represent different classes of people and their interdependence.
Right.
And it kind of reveals this hidden order within society.
It's fascinating how this text, weaves together these spiritual insights with practical guidance on governance and social order.
It's like this tapestry of wisdom.
Where each thread kind of contributes to a larger picture.
And speaking of interconnectedness, the text also talks about a sensitive topic, which is the dangers of divulging secrets.
Right.
And this isn't just, talking about gossip, but it's talking about the consequences.
It's about concealed knowledge.
Of revealing concealed knowledge inappropriately.
Right.
And there's this chilling statement by Imam as-Sadiq, peace be upon him,
Yes.
where he says, referencing verse 4.83 of the Quran, God the glorified imputed dishonor to some people in the Quran because they divulged secrets. This is in his saying. When they receive any news of peace or war, they announce it in public.
Right, and it really makes you think that possessing knowledge comes with this great responsibility.
It's like drawing a line, that seeking knowledge is encouraged, but you need discretion.
There's a need for discernment.
Yeah, it's not a free-for-all. Exactly.
And so the text also provides some examples of what can happen when you misuse this knowledge.
Yeah, right. Like with the stories of al-Muqira ibn Sa'id and Abu Khattab.
Yes, they serve as cautionary tales about revealing Imam as-Sadiq's, peace be upon him, secret.
And this idea is further emphasized by the story of Imam al-Askari, peace be upon him, and how his brother falsely claimed to be the Imam.
Right, and it led to so much chaos and confusion.
Yeah, and it highlights the potential dangers
of,
distorting or prematurely revealing spiritual truth.
Absolutely. It raises the question of how do we approach this knowledge with the right intentions.
And with a sense of responsibility.
Exactly. And that's something that we'll continue to explore as we go further into Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
Because this text is about more than just acquiring information.
Absolutely.
It's about understanding the implications of this knowledge.
And its impact on our spiritual growth.
Yes.
And our interactions with the world around us.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to take a short break.
We'll be back soon to uncover even more hidden gems of wisdom from the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him and his family, household, as we continue our deep dive into Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
So you know what's fascinating about Tuhaf Al-Uqul?
What's that?
Is that it doesn't just, present these esoteric teachings as abstract concepts.
Yeah.
It actually provides practical guidance on how to live a virtuous life.
That's like a manual for spiritual development.
Exactly.
Filled with advice from the Imams, peace be upon them, on how to navigate the complexities of life.
Absolutely.
And one theme that I noticed that really stands out is this idea of personal accountability.
Yeah.
Self-reflection.
Right. And this is actually highlighted very clearly in Imam Ali's peace be upon him statement.
Okay.
Where he says, 4 matters always accompany other 4 ones. He who holds a position of leadership will surely act arbitrarily. He who does not seek others' advice will surely regret. As you subjugate, you will surely be subjugated. Poverty is the grand death.
Whoa, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right.
It's basically saying that, our actions have consequences.
Absolutely.
And that's especially true for those in positions of authority.
Especially those in leadership.
Yeah, and that true leadership actually begins with mastering yourself.
Right.
But it goes beyond just our outward actions too, right?
Absolutely.
Imam Ali, peace be upon him, also talks about our thoughts and intentions. He says, "O Ali, beware of backbiting and tail-bearing. Backbiting breaks the ritual. Fasting and tail-bearing causes the burial punishment."
Right. He's highlighting the need to really purify our speech.
Right.
Guard against negativity.
Even in our thoughts.
Yeah, even in our thoughts.
Like what we think can have an impact.
Absolutely. Our words have power.
Yeah.
Even these seemingly, small transgressions can really impact our spiritual state or our relationships.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, the text connects this idea of inner purity with our outward actions. So, it's not just about avoiding certain behaviors.
Right.
But it's about cultivating that inner awareness.
It's about aligning our thoughts, our words, our deeds.
With our understanding.
Exactly. It's about embodying our faith.
Embodying our faith. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And speaking of embodiment, there's that really striking passage where Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, is asked about the meaning of poverty. And he responds by saying, no, it is the poverty of the religion.
Wow, that's so profound.
It really reframes our understanding of wealth.
Yeah.
It's reminding us that true abundance lies in spiritual richness.
Not material possessions.
Right.
And this whole idea of balance, it also extends to our relationships.
Absolutely.
And I was struck by Imam al-Hussein's, peace be upon him, description of a true friend. He says, "The friend who is for you and for himself is that who seeks the continuity of your friendship through fraternity and does not seek the interruption of your friendship through fraternity."
It's a beautiful definition, right? It highlights this importance of reciprocity and mutual support in friendship.
Exactly. And so this idea of balance, interconnectedness, it really ties into the text's exploration of the nature of knowledge itself.
Yes, and there's this powerful statement from Imam Ali, peace be upon him, where he says, "Through knowledge, God is obeyed, worshipped, acknowledged, and confessed of his being one. Through knowledge, likewise, relations are regarded and halal and haram are realized. Knowledge is the leader of the intellect."
It's like knowledge is not just about accumulating facts.
It's about understanding our relationship with God.
Yeah, and using that knowledge
to guide our actions.
To guide our interaction.
To guide our understanding.
Of what's permissible and forbidden.
Exactly. It's like a compass.
A compass.
Yeah.
I like that.
It points us toward a life of meaning and purpose.
But the text also acknowledges that there are challenges and complexities when seeking knowledge.
Right, because knowledge itself is not always easy.
And in Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he warns against this idea of blind faith.
Blind faith.
He says, due to his idiocy, the foolish may commit sins that are greater than those sins committed by the lewd ones. According to their intelligence, the servants will have higher ranks and be close to their Lord.
He's encouraging us to engage intellectually, to question.
To seek deeper understanding.
To make sure our beliefs are rooted in knowledge.
Not just blind acceptance.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of the text.
Okay.
Which is this whole idea of the balance between seeking knowledge and respecting its limits.
Its limits.
And do you remember that story?
Which story?
About Imam Askari, peace be upon him. And the scholar Ishaq.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Imam tells him,
"Yeah,
you should know so fully, Ishaq, that whoever quits this world with blindness will be also blind in the world to come, and in terrible error."
Right, and he explains that this blindness is not talking about physical sight.
No, it's the blindness of the heart.
Right, and so it's a powerful reminder that even as we strive for knowledge, we have to remain humble.
Remain humble. Recognize those limitations. There are mysteries that we may never fully grasp.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. It's about finding that balance between curiosity and surrender.
Right.
Between understanding.
And acknowledging the unknown.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been a really rich exploration so far.
I know, right?
We've covered so much.
We have.
Personal accountability, inner purity, balance the nature of knowledge, the limits of understanding.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What do we take all of this and apply it?
That's the million-dollar question.
To our everyday life.
And that's actually what we're going to be exploring.
Okay.
In the final part of our deep dive.
Right.
Into Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
Sounds good.
We'll be looking at the practical applications of these teachings and how we can use this wisdom to navigate the modern world.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Me too.
But for now, dear listeners, we encourage you to take a moment and reflect on what we've discussed.
Yeah, what's resonating with you?
What insights are you taking away?
Hold on to those thoughts.
Because we'll be back soon to complete our journey
into the esoteric wisdom
of Tuhaf Al-Uqul. All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
Yes.
We've spent some time, exploring.
We've been exploring.
Concealed knowledge, symbolic interpretation.
The balance of sharing wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm curious now, how do we actually bridge the gap between these teachings and our lives?
How do we apply this?
In the modern world.
Exactly.
What can we do?
Yeah, that's the question.
Practically.
It's one thing to, appreciate these teachings intellectually.
Yeah, to understand them.
But to actually embody them.
Yeah, to put them into action.
That's the challenge.
So does Tuhaf Al-Uqul, give us any guidance on this?
Well, one thing that really struck me was this recurring theme of balance.
Balance. So
it's we're constantly walking this tightrope between,
Yeah, between our worldly responsibilities and our spiritual aspirations.
That tension is always there.
Right. And so how do we find that equilibrium?
Well, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, actually addresses this in his letter to Malik al-Ashtar.
Right, when he's giving him advice on how to govern.
Exactly. And he says, know that the people consist of classes who prosper only with the help of one another, and they are not independent of one another.
Right. So it's
it's this idea of interconnectedness
We're all connected.
Exactly.
Our actions impact others.
It's not just about focusing on your own spiritual growth in isolation.
We have to think about the well-being of everyone.
Of the whole community.
Yeah, society.
And actually, this sense of responsibility, it extends even beyond our immediate circle.
Okay.
Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, talks about the importance of social justice.
Social justice, okay.
He says, for those who serve undiscerning boys wine, God will detain them in the mixture of clay and blood, unless they provide a justifiable excuse.
Right. And so he's emphasizing this need.
Yeah, to protect the vulnerable.
To speak out against injustice.
To recognize that our faith is not just a private matter.
It's a social matter.
It has ethical implications.
But knowing when to speak out.
Right.
You know how to do that.
That can be tricky.
It's a challenge.
Especially when we think about the warnings against divulging secrets.
Right, because we talked about
how we balance that.
Not revealing concealed knowledge inappropriately.
It comes down to discernment.
Discernment.
Remember what Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, said?
Yeah.
He wasn't saying don't share anything.
Right.
But to be wise.
To be thoughtful.
How we share.
He says, God's mercy be upon him who buries under the feet whatever he hears from our concealed issues.
Right. Sometimes silence is the best course of action.
Silence and reflection.
Exactly.
Rather than just broadcasting everything we know.
And this ties back to the importance of symbolic interpretation.
Oh, right.
Because remember,
not everything is meant to be taken literally.
Exactly. Sometimes the greatest insights come from contemplating.
Yeah, the deeper meanings.
The hidden meanings behind the words.
Right. So we need to develop a way of listening not just to the words, but to the truth behind them.
To the deeper truth.
Yeah, like a spiritual intelligence.
And that requires cultivating inner stillness.
Inner stillness.
Space for contemplation and reflection.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, Imam Al-Hadi, peace be upon him, talks about this.
Okay.
He says, the few deeds of the intelligent will be accepted and doubled, while the many deeds of the followers of passions and the ignorant will be rejected.
So it's not about
just rushing into things.
Just doing things to do them.
It's about thoughtful action.
Right. It's about intentionality.
Aligning our actions with deeper understanding.
With our values.
And that brings us back to
the
idea of self-reflection.
Self-reflection.
Which Tuhaf Al-Uqul emphasizes.
Consistently.
Evaluating our motivations.
Purifying our intentions.
Right. And remember that passage from Imam Sajjad, peace be upon him.
Oh, yeah, where he talks about
the hypocrite
who goes through the motion.
Prayer.
But without any real devotion.
He says, when he stands for offering the prayer, he turns right and left. When he genuflects in the prayer, he huddles. And when he prostrates himself, he pecks. In evenings, his only concern is dinner while he was not fasting. In mornings, his only concern is to sleep while he has not passed the last night with worship.
So true spirituality.
Yes.
It's not about, impressing others.
It's not about checking boxes.
It's about our hearts.
It's about aligning our actions.
With our deepest values.
With what really matters.
So it sounds like Tuhaf Al-Uqul is offering us this roadmap.
It's a guide.
For inner transformation.
A journey that begins with knowledge.
But leads us to embodying that knowledge.
In every aspect of our lives.
In everything we do.
And it's a journey that requires ongoing effort.
Ongoing effort.
Vigilance.
And Imam Al-Askari, peace be upon him,
He reminds us, you are plunging into decreased deadlines and limited days. He who sows good will harvest delight. And he who sows evil will harvest regret. Each cultivator will gain only what he has cultivates.
Wow.
It's a powerful call to action.
It really is to make the most of our time.
To cultivate goodness.
Yeah, to be mindful.
In every moment.
Wow. This has been such a fascinating dope dive.
I know, right?
Into Tuhaf Al-Uqul.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners.
Yes.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights.
Hopefully you can apply this wisdom
from this exploration
to your own lives.
Remember, the true value of this wisdom is not just in knowing it.
It's in living it.
It's in putting it into practice.
May these teachings inspire you.
Yeah, on your journey
of spiritual growth.
And empower you to bring more light and goodness into the world.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep seeking.
And keep reflecting.
And keep diving deep.
بسم الله النور بسم الله النور بسم
Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at some pretty fascinating stuff from Shia Islam.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, we're going to be diving into the esoteric teachings found within Shia Islam. And to do that, we're going to be focusing specifically on the words of the Imams, the descendants of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny.
Yeah, and this is going to be very interesting because this is a collection of their sayings, their wisdom, and it really gives us like a specific and unique perspective into their spirituality. And to make sure we're giving credit where credit is due, we will be mentioning the specific Imam, peace be upon them all, who said each quote. It's really going to be like getting a glimpse into their inner circle,
Yeah, and honestly, it is kind of like stepping into a secret society or something.
Exactly.
You're getting this inside knowledge from these really revered figures in Shia Islam.
Definitely. And one thing I think we should point out is that what we're looking at is not just like some dry theological debate. It's really, like you said, that glimpse into the spiritual insights of these revered figures.
Absolutely. To start off, let's talk about something called the unseen. It's a really big idea in these teachings, and honestly, it's something I've always been curious about. What does it even mean in this context?
Well, the unseen, it basically refers to everything that is beyond our ordinary senses and perception.
So stuff we can't see or hear or smell or taste or touch.
Exactly. It's the realm of the spiritual, the divine, the metaphysical.
Right.
It acknowledges that there's just more to reality than the stuff we can see and touch.
Okay, that makes sense. But then how do we even begin to wrap our minds around something that's literally unseen?
Right. That's a great question.
It's kind of like trying to grab smoke, you know what I mean?
It really is. And to address this, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he addresses this head on. He says that God cannot be truly grasped by our physical sight. He can't be grasped by the concepts that we create or even through like mystical experiences. He said, God assigned Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny in the world that he created to represent him, since the sights cannot realize him, the notions cannot cognize him, and the mysteries of the suppositions in the secrets cannot describe him.
Okay, so we're not supposed to try and box God into our limited understanding.
Exactly. It's a great reminder of just how vast and mysterious the divine really is, and our human minds, they just can't fully comprehend that.
Right.
But that's okay.
Yeah, I guess in a way it's kind of freeing, right? Like we don't have to have all the answers.
Totally.
But what about our own spiritual nature? How did the Imams see us in relation to all of this unseen stuff?
Well, this is where things get even more intriguing. Imam as-Sadiq, peace be upon him, talked about this concept of spirit or ruh in Arabic, and he described 4 distinct spirits that are within each of us. 4: faith, power, passion, and the physical.
So it's not just one soul, but all these different aspects that are kind of working together.
Yeah, exactly. And it suggests a really dynamic interplay within us. Our faith, our willpower, our desires, and then our physical bodies. They all influence each other, and they shape our spiritual journey.
Makes sense. It's kind of like we're balancing all these different forces inside of ourselves at the same time.
Right.
And speaking of different forces, what about things like psychic phenomena and paranormal beliefs? Because this is a topic that always causes a lot of debate, even within Shia Islam.
Yeah, it does. And it's fascinating to see how the Imams actually approach this topic. They didn't just shy away from these subjects, but they also stress the importance of being discerning.
Okay, so it's not like blindly accepting or rejecting everything that's considered paranormal.
Right.
There's like nuance to it.
Exactly. There's a lot of nuance to their teachings. For example, Imam Al-Hadi, peace be upon him, he actually tackled the question of fate versus free will.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is a really big one. And he argued for a middle ground.
Yeah.
He recognized that we do have agency, but it's within a divinely ordained framework. He explains that God, the Exalted, has neither been worshipped by force, nor has he been defied due to being overcome. He has not respited the servants uselessly. He is surely the possessor of what he has given to them in possession and controls what he has empowered.
So it's not like predestination or absolute free will, but kind of a balance between the two.
Yeah.
That's actually really helpful to think about. It's like we're co-creating our reality with the divine.
Exactly. And this idea even resonates with us today, as people are struggling with understanding just how much control we have over our own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a question I've definitely wrestled with myself. What about other paranormal beliefs? Did the Imams address things like miracles or the supernatural?
While they might not have gone into a lot of specifics, their teachings do offer insights into how connected the spiritual and physical realms really are. Take Imam al-Bakir, peace be upon him, for example. He said that God grants patience in proportion to the hardship faced.
Wow, that's actually really comforting to think about.
It is.
Like, no matter what I'm going through, there's this divine calibration that's happening to make sure that I never get more than I can handle.
Precisely. And it kind of hints at this deeper intelligence that's at work, offering us that support during really difficult times. Now, we also have Imam As-Sadiq, peace be upon him, who offered some more practical advice for protection. He recommended drawing a line around animals and reciting a prayer for protection against beasts. He said, when you intend to sleep in a place where you fear the beasts, draw a line around you and recite this prayer.
That's interesting how these teachings can be so esoteric and practical at the same time.
Right.
They address these huge questions about the unseen world, but also offer like real-life tips and advice.
Absolutely. And it highlights how spirituality isn't separate from like our everyday lives. It's in everything.
Right. Speaking of which, let's talk about astrology and the stars. How did the Imams view this whole realm?
Well, they acknowledged that the celestial realm does have an influence, but they cautioned against putting blind faith in astrology. It was like they recognized the impact the stars have, but they weren't saying that our destinies are set in stone.
So more like cosmic influences rather than a fixed blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. Imam As-Sadiq, peace be upon him, for example, he advised against specific activities during certain nights of the lunar calendar because of something he called the shaitan's influence, he said. In the first and middle nights of the Hijri months, do not copulate with your ladies because the shaitans search for sons in such times.
Okay, that's very specific.
It is.
But it also suggests that they had a deep understanding of how these celestial cycles could align with spiritual forces.
Yes.
It kind of makes you wonder, what other subtle influences are at play that we're not even aware of? You know?
Right. That's a great question, and it really invites us to pay attention to those rhythms and those cycles in nature and how they might be affecting us. Then we have Imam Ali, peace be upon him, who emphasizes understanding what he calls the signs of the times. He said, he who does not recognize the time will be broken by the time.
By signs of the times, do you think he meant, like, the literal astrological signs, or was it something broader?
I think he meant something much broader. I think it's more about recognizing the constant change that is happening all around us in the world, in society, even in ourselves, and adapting wisely to that change.
That is such a relevant message for us today.
It is.
It feels like everything is changing so quickly in our modern world.
It really does.
So yeah, it's about staying adaptable and aware and not getting stuck in old patterns and ways of thinking.
Precisely. It's recognizing the flow of life and moving with it, not resisting it.
Right. This kind of brings us to another area where the Imams offered a lot of guidance, forbidden practices. I'm really interested to hear what they had to say about this.
Well, they were actually pretty clear about certain behaviors that go against the principles of justice, truth, and ethical conduct. For example, Imam As-Sadiq, peace be upon him, strongly discouraged working for unjust rulers.
Wow, that's a pretty bold stance to take.
It is.
It's like saying that complicity, even in ordinary jobs, can have ethical consequences.
Yes.
Makes you think about your own choices and where you draw the line.
Yeah, it does. It raises the question of whether we're contributing to a system that is upholding injustice.
Yeah.
Even if it's indirect.
Yeah, indirectly.
It's a challenge to think about our own roles and responsibilities in such a complex world.
It's true. It's not just about our personal piety, but how our actions can actually impact the world around us.
Exactly. And speaking of impact, Imam Al-Hadi, peace be upon him, he counseled against divulging secrets. He said, God will not treat well him who discloses his friend's secret, even if the friend disobeys God in his secret.
It's like that idea that, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. But it resonates really deeply with our concerns today about privacy and trust.
Absolutely.
Because in this world where information is constantly shared, it's like a reminder to be careful how we handle sensitive information with care and respect.
Absolutely. It really highlights the ethical dimension of our words and how those words can impact relationships and trust.
Totally. So all this talk about ethical conduct and forbidden practices, I'm wondering, did the Imams offer any practical guidance on things like ritual purity?
They did. Imam Aritha, peace be upon him, for example, advised against using certain materials for prayer mats.
Okay.
And emphasized how important cleanliness and purity are in our spiritual practices.
So once again, we see that blend of the esoteric and the practical.
Right.
It's not just these lofty ideals, it's about how we live our lives day to day.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so relevant to us today.
Yeah. This has been a really insightful conversation so far.
Yes, it has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah.
From the nature of the unseen to psychic phenomena, astrology, and even forbidden practices. And I'm really starting to see that these teachings are very rich and multi-layered.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And speaking of layers, I'm curious to hear what the Imams had to say about spiritual hierarchy.
Okay, that's a great segue. Because the Imams did acknowledge that there is a spiritual hierarchy.
Okay.
But not in the way that you might think.
Oh, so it's not just like a rigid ladder of spiritual attainment.
Not at all. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he categorized people based on their relationship with knowledge and piety. He explained, 3 types of people will be shaded under God's throne on the day of judgment. A man who helps his brother in his affairs whether or not he likes it. A man who refrains from an action until he knows whether it pleases or displeases God. And a man who does not reproach his brother for a fault he has.
So it's more about specific qualities that mark spiritual growth.
Right.
Like empathy, self-awareness, and, holding back from judgment.
Yep.
That's actually really encouraging because it suggests that spiritual advancement is within reach for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It's about cultivating those qualities within ourselves rather than comparing ourselves to others.
I love that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It really shifts the focus from competition to inner development.
Yeah.
And Imam As-Sadiq, peace be upon him, he kind of took this even further. He differentiated between true faith, which is iman in Arabic, and just doing those outward Islamic rituals, he explained. Faith is acknowledgement with the heart, confession with the tongue, and action with the limbs.
Wow. That's a profound distinction.
It really is.
It's not just about going through the motions. It's about genuine belief and action that flows from the heart. It really makes you question your own sincerity.
It does.
It's like an invitation to look at our motivations and make sure our actions actually align with what we believe deep down.
Yeah, and it reminds us that true spirituality is an inner journey. It's not just the outward display. This brings us to another fascinating topic, the concept of the imam. Now, we've already touched upon their role as spiritual guides, but what deeper insights did they offer about their unique position?
Well, the Imams emphasize their divinely appointed role as successors to Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. They saw themselves as inheriting his teachings and his guidance. And Imam Arida, peace be upon him, explained it like this. The Imam is the one whose knowledge is perfect, whose forbearance is complete, and who is worthy of leading the people.
So it's like saying that true leadership is about embodying wisdom, compassion, and the ability to guide others.
Yes.
It's not about power or authority,
right,
but about having these higher qualities.
And they stress that obedience to God requires recognizing their guidance.
But what does that obedience look like in practice?
Yeah.
Is it just about following rules, or is there something more to it?
Well, the Imams, they define true obedience as coming from a deep love and understanding of God.
Okay.
It's not about blind faith or fear, but about aligning your will with the divine will out of love and devotion.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. It's like choosing to follow God's guidance because your heart is drawn to it.
Yes.
Not because you feel obligated.
Exactly. It's recognizing that submission to God flows from a place of love and connection. And Imam al-Hussein, peace be upon him, explained it like this. He who knows God will fear nothing but him.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
It really is.
It suggests that when we connect with the divine, our fears kind of fall away because we know that we're held and guided by this force that's bigger than us.
Exactly. It's about finding that unshakable trust and surrendering to the divine will.
So the Imams, they emphasize this really deep interconnection with God, but did they also acknowledge the role of reason and intellect in this journey?
Yes.
Can we question things and think critically within this framework?
Absolutely. The Imams encouraged us to use our intellect to understand the wisdom behind their teachings. It wasn't about demanding blind faith. They invited us to explore and contemplate and actually arrive at our own deeper understanding through reasoning.
So it's not about shutting down our doubts or questions, but actually engaging with these teachings in a meaningful way.
Right. And they recognize that true faith is actually strengthened through understanding, not blind acceptance. And Imam As-Sadiq, peace be upon him, he said, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave.
So learning is like a lifelong journey.
It is.
It never really ends.
It doesn't.
And this brings us to a topic that I find really interesting, the world of dreams and visions. How did the Imams view these experiences?
Well, they acknowledge that dreams can be a channel for divine communication and guidance.
Okay.
But they stress the importance of being discerning.
Right.
Not every dream is a prophetic message.
So it's about paying attention to the dreams that really resonate deeply with us and offer insights into our spiritual journey.
Yeah, exactly. It's about developing that sensitivity to the language of the subconscious and those subtle ways that the divine might be trying to communicate with us.
This has been a really rich exploration.
It has.
We've covered so much.
We have.
But it feels like we're just getting started.
Oh, we are.
There's so much depth and wisdom to these esoteric teachings.
There really is. It's been a fascinating journey so far.
It has.
And I'm really excited to delve even deeper into these mystical and experiential dimensions.
Yeah, me too. We're going to be back after a short break to explore those topics even further.
As we kind of continue to explore these esoteric teachings, I think it's important to remember that they're not meant to be just theoretical concepts.
Right.
They're supposed to be lived and applied to our lives.
Right. So it's not just about like accumulating knowledge, but about putting it into practice.
Yeah.
So what's the practical relevance of all of this for us, in our daily lives?
The whole aim of these teachings is transformation. It's about a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationship with God, and our place in the universe. And they provide this framework for navigating life's challenges, for making ethical choices,
Right.
and ultimately drawing closer to the divine.
Okay, so like a roadmap for spiritual growth, offering guidance and practices to help us become more aligned with our true selves.
Exactly. And one of the key themes that emerges from these teachings is the importance of balance. And we see this in how the Imams approach the material world.
So it's not about rejecting worldly things or pleasures,
No.
but finding a kind of balance between the spiritual and the material.
Exactly. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he cautioned against becoming too attached to worldly possessions, he said. He who seeks this world will be afflicted with its hardships, and he who seeks the hereafter will be granted its blessings.
It's a good reminder that true fulfillment doesn't come from just chasing after external things. There's a deeper satisfaction that comes from cultivating our inner world.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that lasting happiness, it's not found in those possessions, but in nurturing our connection with the divine.
That makes me think about the pursuit of knowledge. We talked about how much the Imams valued seeking knowledge, but is there a risk of maybe overemphasizing that intellectual side at the expense of other aspects of our spiritual growth?
Yeah, that's a great point. And balance is super important here too. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, said that knowledge is a guide and action is its follower. He who has knowledge but does not act is like one who has provisions but does not eat.
I see what you mean. Knowledge without action is like having a map, but never actually going on the journey.
Exactly. And this actually brings us to another crucial aspect of spiritual development, and that is the purification of the heart.
Ooh, that's a big one for me.
It is a big one.
I've always struggled with that. It feels like there's this constant battle going on inside, trying to quiet all those negative thoughts and emotions, and it can be really overwhelming. What did the Imams have to say about this?
Well, the Imams stressed that purifying the heart, it's really at the core of spiritual growth.
Okay.
It's about clearing away things like envy, greed, arrogance, and resentment. Basically anything that blocks our connection with God.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But how do we even begin to tackle those deep-rooted patterns? Because, like I said, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, it really can be. But the Imams offered practical guidance on this. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, he emphasized the importance of self-reflection and turning to God for help. He said, the best form of worship is to reflect upon God's blessings.
Reflection and gratitude. Got it. So it's like shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have.
Exactly. And Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, he advised, a believer's tongue is behind his heart. When he wants to speak, he ponders it in his heart. If it is good, he utters it, and if it is bad, he conceals it. A hypocrite's heart is behind his tongue. He utters whatever comes to his tongue without knowing whether it is good or bad.
Okay, that's a great practice to try. Like taking a pause before you speak, checking in with your heart to see what's really going on.
It is. It's about cultivating mindfulness in our words and actions.
All this talk about purification and self-reflection makes me think of the concept of jihad, or struggling in the way of God.
Right.
And this is something that's often associated with like warfare and things like that. But I'm curious about what deeper meanings the Imams attach to it.
Well, they actually saw jihad as encompassing way more than just physical combat.
Okay.
It's about that inner struggle against our lower selves. It's overcoming negative habits and tendencies and striving for a life of virtue and righteousness.
So it's like conquering those internal battles,
Yes.
those urges that kind of lead us away from our highest good.
Yeah. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, said, "The greatest jihad is the jihad against one's own self."
So real strength comes from mastering ourselves.
Yes.
Not trying to control others.
Exactly. It's that internal struggle for self-improvement, aligning our will with the divine.
And how does community fit into this journey of spiritual development?
Oh, that's a great question.
Did the Imams talk about the importance of, connecting with other people who are on a similar path?
They absolutely did. They encouraged us to seek out those righteous companions to support each other and work together to create a more just and compassionate world.
So it's not about isolating ourselves in our spiritual pursuits.
No.
But recognizing that we can grow and support each other collectively.
Exactly. And Imam al-Bakir, peace be upon him, actually offered some guidance on how to choose our companions wisely. He said, "Associate with those who remind you of God when you see them, whose speech increases your knowledge, and whose actions encourage you to do good deeds."
So it's like surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, who challenge you and uplift you.
Yeah.
Because the company we keep can either nourish our spiritual growth or really hinder it.
It's true. And when you find those genuine connections, it makes all the difference in the journey.
Yeah, and it leads us back to the concept of the Imam. We've talked about their role as guides, but I'm really curious to hear what they had to say about their own unique position.
Yeah. Well, the Imams often emphasize their divinely appointed role as successors to Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. They were entrusted with preserving and transmitting his teachings. Imam as-Sadiq, peace be upon him, explained that the Imam is the proof of God on his earth and his guide to his paradise.
So they were like a direct link to the divine, a source of guidance for all humanity.
Exactly. And they really emphasize that true obedience to God involves recognizing and following their leadership.
But what do it mean by true obedience? It's got to be more than just following rules and rituals, right?
Oh, yeah, it's way more than that. It's about aligning our will with the divine will out of love and understanding. Imam al-Kazim, peace be upon him, said, "Obedience to God is a light that illuminates the heart."
So it's not about blind submission or fear, but about a heart that's filled with love and devotion.
Exactly. And the Imams taught that this kind of obedience leads to inner peace and contentment.
Yeah, I can see that. When we surrender to what is and align ourselves with the divine will, it really does bring a sense of ease and flow to life.
Absolutely. It's about releasing our resistance and embracing that flow of divine guidance.
Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of seeking knowledge.
Yes.
But what specific guidance did the Imams give on this? Like, where should we be looking for this knowledge?
Well, they stress the importance of learning from people who are grounded in both knowledge and piety.
Okay.
And they encouraged us to find those mentors and guides who actually embody the principles that they teach. Imam Aridha, peace be upon him, he advised, "Seek knowledge, for seeking it is an act of worship. Discussing it is glorification of God. Searching for it is jihad."
So seeking knowledge isn't just an intellectual thing.
Right.
It's an act of devotion. It's woven into our spiritual practice.
Exactly. And the Imams recognize that knowledge actually has the power to transform us from within, leading to greater understanding and closeness to God.
Right. So it's not just about passively absorbing information.
Right.
But actively seeking it out and embodying it.
Absolutely. It's about taking ownership of our journey and continuously seeking ways to grow and evolve.
And of course, that journey includes challenges. I mean, life throws us curveballs, and they can be really tough to stay on the path sometimes. So what did the Imams have to say about navigating those difficult times?
Well, they emphasize that those trials and tribulations are an inherent part of the human experience.
Okay.
And they often serve as opportunities for growth. Imam al-Hadi, peace be upon him, said, "God tests his servants with calamities so that he may purify them from sins and elevate their ranks."
That's a powerful way to look at it.
It is.
It's not about avoiding hardship,
No.
but recognizing that it can actually refine us, like fire refining gold.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes it's hard to see that silver lining when you're in the middle of a really difficult situation.
It is.
So how can we cultivate that kind of perspective?
Well, they recommended practices like prayer, remembering God, and connecting with those supportive companions that we talked about earlier. It's about drawing strength from our spiritual practices and seeking solace in the divine presence.
Okay, those are good reminders. It's like building up our spiritual resilience so we can weather those storms of life.
Exactly. And Imam as-Sadiq, peace be upon him, he also added, "The best of people is he who, when afflicted with hardship, increases his supplication to God.
So beautiful. Turning to God in times of need and finding comfort and guidance in prayer. It's like recognizing that we're never really alone, even in those dark moments.
Exactly. And the Imams taught that surrendering to the divine, that trust in a greater plan, is what allows us to find peace and acceptance even when things are really tough.
This has been such a profound conversation.
It really has.
We've explored so many layers of these teachings.
Yeah.
And it's clear that they offer guidance for every aspect of our lives.
They really do. It's been a privilege to share these insights, and I'm actually really excited to continue our exploration in our final segment, where we can delve into those more mystical and experiential dimensions.
Me too. We'll be back after a short break to explore those fascinating realms. Okay, so we're back. And I'm ready to get into some of the more mystical stuff.
Oh, yeah.
This is the part I've been looking forward to.
Me too.
We've talked about the foundations and ethics and, the more practical guidance from these esoteric teachings.
Right.
But now I want to hear about those direct experiences of the divine. You know, those moments where you feel like you're really connected to something bigger than yourself?
Right.
Did the Imams talk about any practices that could help people reach those kinds of transcendent states?
They did, and they really emphasized that inner journey. They recognized that true spiritual growth isn't just about intellectual understanding, but also about direct experiential knowledge of God.
So it's not just about reading about God or hearing stories. It's about feeling and experiencing God's presence.
Exactly.
That's where it gets really interesting. What kind of practices did they recommend for cultivating those kinds of experiences?
Well, they talked about things like dhikr,
Okay.
which is the remembrance of God.
Okay.
And this involves repeating certain sacred phrases or names of God to really focus the mind and heart on the divine. It's about creating a constant awareness and bringing your attention back to that connection throughout the day.
That makes sense. It's so easy to get caught up in everything else that's going on in our lives and forget about that deeper connection.
Yeah.
So it's like dhikr is this way to kind of anchor ourselves back to the divine,
Yeah.
even when things are really crazy.
Absolutely. And they also spoke about muraqabah, which is a form of contemplative meditation. And it involves quieting the mind and opening yourself up to God's presence. It's really about creating space for stillness and receptivity.
Yeah, I could see how those practices would be helpful.
Right.
It's about creating that sacred space within yourself, that sanctuary where you can connect with the divine on a deeper level.
Exactly. And the Imams taught that through those practices.
Yeah.
We can actually reach these states of spiritual insight, illumination, and even visions of the unseen realm.
Visions of the unseen realm. Now we're talking. Are there any examples of the Imams having or describing these kinds of mystical experiences?
Well, while they may not have explicitly spoken about their own personal experiences, there are accounts of them sharing insights that they gained through those practices. For instance, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, peace be upon him, said, "Whenever you wish to see us, look at the moon on the night of the full moon, and you will have certainly seen us."
Wow, that's really something. It suggests that there's this level of spiritual perception that goes beyond ordinary sight.
It does.
Like they were able to see things that most of us can't even imagine.
Exactly. And this kind of insight, according to the Imams, it's not just limited to a select few.
Yeah.
They believe that it's available to anyone who's willing to purify their heart, refine their consciousness, and really dedicate themselves to seeking God.
So we all have the potential for these really amazing experiences.
Wow. Yes.
But it's not about just sitting around and waiting for them to happen. It's about actively working towards them.
Right. It's about creating the right conditions within ourselves.
Okay, so now I'm thinking about the end goal of this mystical path.
Yeah.
What did the Imams say about where all this spiritual striving is supposed to lead us?
Well, they described the ultimate goal as union with the divine, a state of complete absorption in God's presence.
Okay.
It's where the individual ego kind of dissolves and only the divine remains.
That idea of mystical union is something I've heard about in other spiritual traditions too. It's that ultimate merging with the source, that return to oneness. Did the Imams give any clues about what that state is actually like?
Well, they taught that that state of union actually transcends human language and comprehension.
Right.
It's beyond anything our limited minds can really grasp.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like trying to describe a color that doesn't exist to someone who's never seen it.
Right.
So did they say anything about how we can reach that state of union?
They emphasize that it's not something that can be forced or achieved just through our own efforts. Ultimately, it's a gift from God.
So it's about finding that balance between striving and surrendering.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the ultimate attainment is a grace that's beyond our control.
Well, this has been an incredible journey.
It really has.
We've gone from those fundamental principles of knowledge and purification and ethical conduct all the way to these amazing realms of mystical experience and that union with the divine. Thank you for listening to our deep dive today. I hope it's inspired you to explore these ideas even further. Until next time, may your journey be filled with light, guidance, and the blessings of the divine.